My name is Charlotte. I'm 73 years old and I've lived what I thought was a good life, raised a family, built a business with my late husband, and tried to be the kind of mother who gave everything to her child. Before I tell you what happened at that engagement party, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this, because what I'm about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about my own son. Let me take you back months before that party so you understand how I got here. My husband Robert died 8 years ago, heart attack. He collapsed in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, his coffee cup still in his hand. Quick, painless, they said. Though I'm not sure anything about losing your partner of 40 years is painless. Robert and I had met in college, Arizona State, back when the campus was half the size it is now. We married young, 22 and 23, and everyone said we wouldn't last, but we proved them wrong. 40 years of marriage, building something real together. We'd started with nothing, student loans and a dream. Robert had this vision of commercial real estate development in Phoenix. Over 3 decades, we built an empire, property by property. By the time Robert died, we owned 12 commercial properties across Phoenix and Scottsdale. The business generated steady rental income that Robert had structured to continue long after we were gone. When he passed, he left everything in a trust, for me during my lifetime, and then for our son, Daniel. The trust was worth about $4 million, plus the business properties that generated nearly $30,000 monthly. Robert had been so smart about it, working with attorneys to create an ironclad structure. He wanted me taken care of, and he wanted Daniel to inherit only when he was mature enough to handle it responsibly. "Charlotte," he'd said to me one night about 2 years before he died, "I need you to promise me something. If I go first, you have to be strong about this trust. Don't let Daniel pressure you into giving him access before he's ready. I've seen too many inheritances destroyed by kids who got money too young. Promise me you'll use your judgment, not just your heart." I'd promised. But sitting at his funeral 8 years later, watching our 30-year-old son cry over his father's casket, I never imagined I'd actually have to keep that promise. Daniel was 38 years old when this story begins. My only child. For years after his father died, it was just the two of us figuring out how to move forward. He'd visit every Sunday for dinner. We'd talk about his work as a project manager at a tech company, about his failed relationships, about his dreams of eventually starting his own consulting firm. I thought we were close. I really did. Then, about a year ago, he met Vanessa. Daniel had called me on a Thursday afternoon, his voice bright with excitement I hadn't heard since before Robert died. "Mom, I met someone special. I want you to meet her." My heart lifted. Daniel had dated over the years, but nothing serious, nothing that made him sound like this, like a teenager with his first crush. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about her." "Her name's Vanessa. She's beautiful, Mom, and smart. She works in marketing and brand consulting. We met at a networking event for my company. She gets me, you know? We've been seeing each other for about 3 months, and I think this could be it." 3 months, and I was just hearing about her now. That should have been my first warning sign. Daniel and I had always been close. He'd always shared his life with me, the good, the bad, the mundane. But 3 months of dating someone special, and he'd said nothing? Still, I pushed down my unease. Maybe he'd wanted to be sure before introducing us. Maybe this was just him being more mature, more private. The first time Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner, I noticed things. Little things that made my stomach twist even as I smiled and played the welcoming mother. She arrived in designer everything. Louboutin heels I recognized from magazine ads, a Chanel bag that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months, jewelry that sparkled expensively in my foyer lighting. For a marketing consultant, she certainly dressed well. But it was more than the clothes. It was the way she assessed my home with calculating eyes, like an appraiser rather than a guest. She lingered on the artwork, Robert's collection of southwestern paintings that had appreciated significantly over the years. She ran her fingers along the antique credenza in the dining room, the one Robert and I had found at an estate sale 30 years ago. "This is original, isn't it?" she'd asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "What period?" "Early 1900s, I'd answered. "It was one of our first purchases together." These can be quite valuable if they're authentic." She'd moved on before I could respond, examining the silver candlesticks on the mantel, the crystal vase on the side table. During dinner, I'd asked about her family, her background, standard getting-to-know-you questions that any mother would ask her son's girlfriend. "Oh, my parents are in Connecticut," she'd said vaguely. "Father's in finance. Mother does charity work. The usual." "And where did you grow up?" "Here and there. We moved around a lot for Father's career." She'd smiled and touched Daniel's arm, steering the conversation away. "Daniel, tell your mother about that project you're working on, the one with the impossible deadline." Every question I asked about her was deflected. Where did she go to college? "A small school back east. You wouldn't have heard of it." What exactly did her consulting work involve? "Oh, it's terribly boring. Brand strategy, market positioning, you know how it is." Who were her friends? What did she like to do? "Mom, isn't she amazing?" Daniel asked me that night after she'd left, his eyes bright with infatuation. I smiled and said yes, because what else could I say? "Your new girlfriend seems more interested in my house than in you." I'd been the overbearing mother before in his previous relationships, and it never went well. So this time, I decided to stay quiet and observe. Over the next few months, Vanessa became a fixture in Daniel's life, and slowly I watched my son change. He started canceling our Sunday dinners. When he did come by, Vanessa was always with him, and she dominated every conversation. She'd make little comments. "Daniel, your mother's house is so dated, don't you think? All this heavy furniture and old art. If this were mine, I'd modernize everything." She'd laugh like it was a joke, but her eyes weren't laughing. Daniel would shift uncomfortably but never defend me. Never say, "Actually, my mother's home is beautiful and filled with memories." He just changed the subject. Then came the conversations about money. "Mom, Vanessa and I have been talking," Daniel said one Sunday, about 4 months into their relationship. "We want to start a business together, a consulting firm, but we need capital to get it off the ground." I'd heard this dream before, but now Vanessa was nodding beside him, her hand on his knee, her expression earnest. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. $200,000 to start," Vanessa said quickly, too quickly. "We have a solid business plan. You'd get a return on your investment, of course." I looked at my son. "Daniel, you know the trust your father set up. The money is protected for a reason. But I do have some discretionary funds. Let me see your business plan, and I'll consider lending you $50,000 as seed money." Vanessa's smile tightened. $50,000 won't be enough for what we have in mind." "Then perhaps you need to scale your vision to match available resources," I said gently. "That's smart business." The temperature in the room dropped. Daniel looked between us, caught. "Mom, we'll figure something out. Don't worry about it." But I could see it in Vanessa's eyes. Disappointment, frustration, and something harder. Calculation. After that day, things shifted. Daniel's visits became even less frequent. When I called, he was always busy. "Vanessa and I are working on the business plan," he'd say, or "We're looking at office spaces." Always Vanessa and I, never just Daniel anymore. Then, 3 months ago, he called with news. "Mom, I proposed. Vanessa said yes, we're getting married." I should have been happy. I should have felt joy for my son. Instead, I felt a cold weight in my stomach. But I pushed it down and said all the right things. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you." "We want to have an engagement party," he continued, his voice excited in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Nothing too big, just close family and friends. Vanessa's handling most of the planning, but we want to do it at her parents' country club. They're members. It'll be beautiful." "Of course," I said. "Whatever you want. Let me know how I can help." Actually, Mom, he paused, Vanessa was hoping you might contribute to the party costs. Her parents are covering the venue, but the catering, the bar, the flowers, it adds up. Maybe $20,000? $20,000 for an engagement party. Not the wedding, just the party. That seems excessive, Daniel. Mom, please, this is important to Vanessa. She wants everything to be perfect, and you have the money. There it was. You have the money. Not we'd appreciate it or if you're able. You have the money, so you should give it. I'll contribute $10,000, I said. That's more than generous. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll tell Vanessa. He hung up without saying goodbye. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. But you don't want to believe the worst about your own child. You tell yourself stories. He's in love, he's distracted, he'll come back to himself once the honeymoon phase passes. You make excuses because the alternative is too painful. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in October. I spent the week before trying to decide what to wear, what gift to bring, how to navigate what I knew would be an uncomfortable evening. I bought a beautiful navy dress, elegant but not attention-grabbing. I had a jeweler create a custom bracelet for Vanessa, platinum with small diamonds, spending $3,000 I couldn't really afford to make a gesture of welcome to my future daughter-in-law. I arrived at the country club at 6:30, 30 minutes after the party started. I'd driven myself, despite Daniel's half-hearted offer to have them pick me up. We'll be busy hosting, Mom. It's probably easier if you drive yourself. Translation: we don't want to be responsible for you. The country club was exactly what I'd expected. Old money elegance with that artificial warmth rich people cultivate. The ballroom was stunning, draped in white fabric and soft gold lighting, with floral arrangements that must have cost a fortune on every table. White roses, white orchids, white peonies, everything white like a wedding. A jazz quartet played in the corner. Waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. I spotted Daniel near the bar, Vanessa attached to his arm in a skin-tight white dress that probably cost more than my car payment. The dress was barely appropriate for an engagement party, more suited for a nightclub or a red carpet. But Vanessa wore it like armor, and every man in the room had noticed. She saw me first, and I watched her lean up to whisper something in Daniel's ear. He turned, and for just a second I saw something cross his face. Not happiness, not pleasure at seeing his mother, something else. Irritation, maybe, or resignation. I walked over, holding the small gift bag with Vanessa's bracelet. My heels clicked on the marble floor, too loud, announcing my approach. "Hi, sweetheart. Congratulations again." I reached to hug Daniel, but Vanessa stepped between us, smooth as a dancer. "Charlotte, you made it. We were worried you might not come." That was the first cut. Not, "We're so glad you're here." "We were worried you might not come." Like my presence was uncertain. Like I was the kind of person who'd skip her own son's engagement party. Several of her friends standing nearby heard it, and I saw their eyes flick between us, assessing. "Of course I'm here," I said, keeping my smile steady even as my chest tightened. "Daniel, you look handsome. That suit is perfect on you." "Thanks, Mom." He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at his drink like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Vanessa, this is for you." I handed her the gift bag. "Welcome to the family." She opened it right there, in front of everyone, barely glancing at the bracelet inside before her lips pursed in what might have been a smile but looked more like disappointment. "Oh, jewelry. How traditional." She handed it to Daniel without even taking it out of the box. "Babe, hold this for me. I need to greet the Hendersons." Traditional. The word hung in the air like an insult. One of her friends, a blonde woman in head-to-toe Prada, snickered. Daniel took the box, but he didn't say anything. Didn't say Mom, thank you, or Vanessa, that was rude. He just held it awkwardly and let Vanessa pull him away. The next hour was torture. I tried to mingle, but I didn't know anyone. The crowd was split into two groups, Vanessa's people and Daniel's colleagues from work. Vanessa's friends were all younger, polished women in designer clothes who looked at me like I was an interesting artifact they might find in a museum. "Oh, you're Daniel's mother. How lovely. And what do you do?" When I said I was retired, I could see them mentally categorizing me. Old, unimportant, not worth their time. Daniel's work colleagues were polite but distant. They clearly knew Vanessa better than they knew me, and they gravitated to her side of the room. I watched my son work the crowd, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, always with Vanessa's hand on his arm, her body angled possessively against his. Vanessa's parents were there, cold, wealthy people who barely acknowledged me beyond a brief handshake. Her father, Preston, looked like money personified. Silver hair, expensive suit, handshake that lasted exactly 2 seconds. "So you're Daniel's mother. Vanessa's told us about you." The way he said it didn't sound complimentary. Her mother, Cecilia, had eyed my dress with barely concealed disdain. "Department store?" she'd asked, her tone making it sound like an accusation. "Yes," I'd said. "Macy's." "How quaint." She'd moved away before I could respond. I decided to try one more time. I walked over to where Daniel and Vanessa stood with a group of her friends. "I was thinking," I said to Daniel, touching his arm lightly, "maybe we could do Sunday dinner next week. Just the 3 of us? I'd love to get to know Vanessa better before the wedding planning really takes off." That's when it happened. Vanessa laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was sharp and dismissive. "Sunday dinners? Daniel, you didn't tell me your mom was still doing that whole weekly family dinner thing. How very 1950s. Her friends snickered. I felt my face flush. "It's just tradition," I said quietly. "Something Daniel and I have done for years." "Had done," Vanessa corrected. Past tense. Daniel's building a new life now, with me. We're quite busy with the business and wedding planning. We don't really have time for, she waved her hand vaguely, obligatory family dinners. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he just stared at his drink. "Daniel works so hard," Vanessa continued, her voice getting louder. Other conversations around us were stopping. People were turning to watch. "The last thing he needs is guilt trips about skipping Sunday dinners with his mother. It's honestly a bit much at his age, don't you think? A grown man having weekly dinners with mommy?" The group around us laughed. My face burned. "I just want to spend time with my son," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "There's nothing wrong with that." "There is when it's suffocating," Vanessa shot back. Her eyes glittered. "Daniel's told me all about how overbearing you can be, how you've tried to control his life, his choices, his relationships. He's too polite to tell you himself, but honestly, Charlotte, you need to learn when to let go." The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, watching me be humiliated by my son's fiancée while he said nothing. I turned to Daniel, tears pricking my eyes. "Is that true? Is that how you feel?" He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his face broke my heart. Embarrassment, shame, but not for what was happening to me. For me. I was embarrassing him. "Mom," he said, his voice low and hard, "you're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" I repeated, incredulous. "Daniel, I think you should leave," he said. Louder this time. People gasped. "You're embarrassing me. Please, just leave." I stood there, frozen. This was my son, my child. The boy I'd rocked to sleep, nursed through illnesses, celebrated every achievement, comforted through every heartbreak. And he was telling me to leave his engagement party because I was an embarrassment. I looked at Vanessa. She was smirking, actually smirking, like she'd won something. "Please, Mom," Daniel said again, "just go." And Vanessa nodded, that smirk still on her face, her eyes cold and triumphant. I felt something break inside me, not just my heart, something deeper. The illusion I'd been carrying that my son was still the person I thought he was. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I didn't make a scene. I simply turned and walked out of that ballroom without looking back. The drive home is a blur. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel so badly I had to pull over twice. I remember the shocked faces of the other guests as I passed. Some looked sympathetic, others looked entertained by the drama. I remember the sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor, too loud in the sudden silence, like gunshots marking my exit. When I got home, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, unable to move. The house looked dark and empty, all the windows black. I thought about Robert. I thought about how he would have handled this. Would he have stayed and fought? Or would he have understood that sometimes walking away is the only response that maintains your dignity? Then I went inside, changed into my nightgown, one of Robert's old t-shirts actually, worn soft from years of washing, and sat in Robert's old chair, the one I'd kept all these years because sometimes I still needed to feel close to him. It was leather, cracked now, molded to the shape of his body. When I sat in it, I could almost feel him there. "What do I do?" I whispered to the empty room. "What do I do about our son?" The silence was answer enough. Robert had known this might happen. That's why he'd structured the trust the way he did. That's why he'd made me promise to be strong. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, replaying every moment, every word. Vanessa's interest in my assets, the way her eyes had lingered on every valuable item, the money requests that kept escalating, Daniel's gradual distancing, the way she'd positioned herself between us, methodically cutting the ties between mother and son. This wasn't about love. This was calculated. Vanessa had found a man with an eventual $4 million inheritance, and she was making sure nothing, especially not his mother, stood between her and that money. Around 3 a.m, I got up and went to my office. Robert's desk, his books, his pictures. I'd never cleared them out. I pulled out the trust documents and read every word carefully. Robert had been specific. Daniel would inherit everything upon my death, but he wouldn't get full control until 45, or earlier if I determined he was financially responsible. Until then, I had complete discretion over distributions. Section 4.7, subsection C, if the trustee has reasonable grounds to believe that the beneficiary is subject to undue influence or manipulation by a third party with regard to trust assets, the trustee may restrict distributions and access until such time as the trustee determines the influence has ceased. Robert, clever man, had anticipated something like this. I texted my attorney, "Need to meet Monday morning, urgent, regarding Daniel's trust." His response came quickly. "Available at 8. Everything okay?" "No," I typed back, "but it will be." Sunday passed in silence. I half expected Daniel to call, to apologize, to say something. I kept my phone on the kitchen counter where I could see it, checking it compulsively even though I knew it wouldn't ring. But my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, nothing. Not even a short "sorry" or "can we talk?" Just silence, which hurt more than I wanted to admit. I spent the day trying to distract myself. I cleaned the kitchen, reorganized the pantry, pulled weeds in the garden until my knees ached. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from replaying that scene at the country club. But every task brought memories. The kitchen where Daniel had eaten breakfast before school every morning for 18 years. The pantry where I'd stocked his favorite snacks. The garden where he'd played as a little boy, digging holes and catching lizards. Where had that little boy gone? When had he turned into someone who could let his fiancée humiliate his mother in public? Monday morning, I met with Paul. He was 63, had been Robert's attorney for 20 years. When I walked into his office at 8 o'clock, he took one look at my face and poured me coffee without asking. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. The relationship with Vanessa, the escalating money requests, the engagement party humiliation, my concerns about manipulation. "You want to restrict his access," Paul said. It wasn't a question. "I want to protect what Robert built," I said. "Not for me, for Daniel. Because right now, he's not thinking clearly, and if I give him access to that trust, Vanessa will drain it in 5 years and leave him with nothing." Paul leaned back in his chair. "You have the authority. The undue influence clause was specifically designed for this. But Daniel will fight it. He'll be angry. This could damage your relationship beyond repair." "Our relationship is already damaged," I said quietly. "At least this way, I'm protecting his future, even if he hates me for it." We spent 2 hours making everything ironclad. By the time I left at 10:30, the trust was locked down. Daniel couldn't access anything without my express written approval. I drove home, made myself lunch that I couldn't eat, and waited. If you're still watching this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because what happened next is something I need you to witness. I need to know I'm not crazy for what I did. The call came the next morning at 8:15. Daniel's number flashed on my phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Mom." His voice was tight, strained. No greeting. No apology for the party. Just, "Mom, I need the trust access." I closed my eyes. Why? Vanessa and I found the perfect building for our consulting business, but we need to move fast. The seller wants proof of funds by end of week. I need you to approve a distribution of $500,000 from the trust. $500,000. 10 times what they'd originally asked for. "For a building?" I asked carefully. "It's an investment, Mom, in our future, in the business. You want me to succeed, don't you?" "I do want you to succeed, Daniel, but I don't think this is about success. I think this is about Vanessa getting access to your father's money." Silence. Then, "That's not fair. What happened at the engagement party wasn't fair either. You're still upset about that." His voice rose. "Mom, you were being clingy and weird, and Vanessa called it out. If you just what? Just let your fiancé humiliate me in public? Just pretend I don't exist so she feels more secure? Just hand over $500,000 so she can control your inheritance? It's my inheritance," he shouted. "Dad left it to me." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Your dad left it in trust with me as trustee to be distributed when I deemed appropriate. And right now, I don't deem it appropriate." "You can't do that." "I can. I have. As of yesterday, all distributions from the trust require my written approval, which I will not give while you're under Vanessa's influence." The sound he made was somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "You spoke to Paul? You locked me out of my own trust?" "I'm protecting you, Daniel. I'm protecting what your father worked for, because right now you're not capable of protecting it yourself. I'm 38 years old. Then act like it. Come to me when you're ready to have an honest conversation about what's really happening here. Until then, the trust stays locked." "Mom," his voice cracked. "Mom, I need this. Vanessa and I need this. If I don't get that money, she'll—" He stopped abruptly. "She'll what, Daniel?" I asked softly. "She'll leave you? Is that what you were going to say?" Silence. "If the only reason Vanessa stays with you is because she thinks you have access to $4 million, then she's not marrying you. She's marrying your inheritance. And I won't let your father's legacy be drained by someone who doesn't love you for who you are." "You don't know her," he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "Neither do you," I replied. "Not really, but you will. Give her time without access to money, and you'll see exactly who she is." "I can't believe you're doing this." His voice turned, cold. "Fine. You want to control everything? You've lost your son. Don't call me, don't text me, we're done." And then I whispered the 4 words I'd been preparing all morning, the 4 words that would end his plans with Vanessa, that would force him to see the truth, that would protect everything his father had built. "I love you, Daniel." That was it. Not "you're cut off," or "you'll regret this." Just the simple truth. 4 words that carried 40 years of motherhood, of sacrifice, of unconditional love that he'd forgotten existed. Because I knew what would happen next. I knew Vanessa would hear about the trust being locked. I knew she'd realize there was no quick access to millions. I knew the mask would slip, and I knew Daniel would have to face the truth about who he'd chosen over his own mother. And I was right. Daniel hung up on me without responding. I sat there with the phone in my hand, my heart breaking, but my resolve firm. I'd protected my son. Whether he understood that now or years from now or never, I'd done what Robert had asked me to do. I'd been strong. The first day after that call was the hardest. I kept reaching for my phone to text Daniel, to check on him, to make sure he was okay. Years of habit don't die easily. Every hour felt like a year. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I cooked meals I didn't eat. I sat in Robert's chair and cried. The second day, I started to wonder if I'd done the right thing. What if I was wrong about Vanessa? What if Daniel really did love her, and I just destroyed his chance at happiness? What if he never spoke to me again? But then I'd remember that smirk on her face, the calculation in her eyes, the way she'd assessed every item in my home, like she was already planning how to spend the money, and I'd know I'd made the right choice. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text. From Daniel. "Can we talk?" My hands shook as I read those 3 words. I called him immediately, not even giving myself time to think about what I'd say. "Hi, sweetheart. Vanessa left me." His voice was flat, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside him. After I told her about the trust being restricted, I tried to explain it was just temporary, that we could still make the business work, that we'd figure it out together. But she wouldn't listen. She said she couldn't be with someone who let their mother control them. She said I was weak. She said she'd wasted a year of her life on someone who didn't have the spine to stand up for what was his. She packed her stuff and moved out that same afternoon. The engagement is off. It's all over. I wanted to say I told you so. I wanted to say I'd known this would happen. I wanted to say she was never good enough for you anyway. But I heard the pain in his voice, raw and real and devastating, and I just said, "I'm sorry you're hurting." "Were you right about her?" he asked quietly, and I could hear him crying now. "Was it always about the money? Did she ever love me at all?" "I think," I said carefully, choosing each word like I was diffusing a bomb. "She saw an opportunity and took it. I don't know if she loved you at all, Daniel. I want to believe she did, at least in the beginning. But I know she didn't love you more than she loved what she thought you could give her. Real love doesn't disappear the moment money becomes unavailable. Real love doesn't walk away when things get hard." He was crying openly now, and the sound broke my heart. "I'm sorry, Mom. God, I'm so sorry. For the party, for everything I said, for how I treated you, for choosing her over you. I should have defended you. I should have seen what was happening. I wanted someone to love me, and I thought she did, and I was willing to ignore everything else. All the red flags you tried to point out, all the warning signs. I saw them too, but I didn't want to admit it. Oh, sweetheart, people do love you. I love you, but you have to love yourself enough not to accept crumbs from someone who sees you as a meal ticket. You deserve someone who wants you for you, not for what you can give them." "Can I come over?" he asked, his voice small like a child's, like the little boy who used to come running to me when he fell off his bike or had a nightmare. "Can we have Sunday dinner? I know I don't deserve it, but—" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Come home. Please come home." That was 3 weeks ago. Daniel's been coming to Sunday dinner every week since. We're rebuilding. It's not easy. There's hurt on both sides, conversations we need to have about boundaries and respect, about how he let someone come between us, about how I need to trust him to make his own decisions. But we're trying. Last Sunday, we cooked together. I made my mother's pot roast recipe. He handled the vegetables. We didn't talk about Vanessa. We talked about his work, about my garden, and the book I'm reading. Small things, building back the foundation one Sunday at a time. As he was leaving, he turned to me at the door. "Mom, about the trust. I'm not going to ask you to unlock it. Not yet. I need to prove to you and to myself that I can make good decisions without access to Dad's money, that I can build something on my own. Will you give me that chance?" Of course, I said. Take all the time you need. He hugged me, really hugged me. Thank you for protecting me, he whispered, even when I didn't want to be protected, even when I hated you for it. Thank you for being strong enough to do what Dad asked. So that's my story. I don't know if I did the right thing. Some days I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have just let him make his own mistakes. But then I remember that smirk on Vanessa's face, the calculations behind her eyes, and I know that sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes love means being the villain in someone else's story so you can save them from themselves. That's all. Thank you for listening to An Old Woman's Tale. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you remember that protecting the people you love isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth it.